Hi, my name is Emily Kincer, and I'm a special education teacher at Letcher County Central High School. For my PAN project this year, I wanted to focus on something that was becoming a common issue for myself and my colleagues and for our students. So I'm focusing on how to implement a behavior intervention plan and how to utilize that plan within a classroom. So a behavior intervention plan, it is a plan that's developed by an annual release committee to combat a child's common negative behaviors that are impacting their educational success. So within the plan, we have strategies, goals, identify stakeholders, and really lay out how we're going to do this. So why am I focusing on this? So during the pandemic, a lot of things changed, and teaching became very challenging for so many reasons. We went from seeing our kids 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, to seeing them through a computer screen. So with that, I really saw a lot of snafus that happened and things that my kids had that were essential needs to be successful falling through the cracks. And so from that, I really developed this drive to want to ensure that my kids always had success no matter what the circumstances were, and that they knew how to incorporate those. And a big part of that is by implementing all parts of their IEP, all parts of their BIP, and them being aware of such. Working at the high school, it's a lot easier to do that. I have young adults, they're involved in their meetings, but also working at the grade school level, you can involve so many different stakeholders with that, as we discussed before. So for my problem practice, really working on implementing a student's behavior intervention plan fully, and how to address and improve poor behaviors while allowing a student to achieve at a higher level, and making sure they have access to that educational content. So with this, I looked at our school report cards, my school-specific testing data, and really looked at how the IEP portion of that, those kids were scoring lower. And, keeping in mind that also a lot of times there are the behavior issues, and looking at my office's disciplinary records and how many kids hold behavior intervention plans that we'll get into in a little bit, and really seeing all those pieces. So for my focus questions, looking at how these behavior intervention plans are developed, who is sitting down and writing these, who is giving feedback for them, and are teachers and students active participations in implementation, and not just special education teachers, but regular education teachers. What is the behavior what is the behavior? How is that being addressed first with the student? Are these being clear to the student? How their behavior is important for their success? Is that clear to them? Who's responsible for implementing the BIP? Is it special education teacher, regular education teacher, parents, paraprofessionals, whoever it might be with the student, and how is it being focused on? And once again, that goes back to our stakeholders, making sure everybody has an equal buy-in and the ultimate goals for success for our students. So for this, I wanted to focus on how to develop an education plan and what it is, and then also how it can be utilized so easily within the classroom. So with this, I wanted to pinpoint some of the missing pieces, and I think that goes back to just making sure that everyone understands what a behavior intervention plan is and its components and the importance of each section. So with this, we also have the 4 R's, which are a very nice piece for a regular education teacher to refer back to. A lot of times these things come second nature for us as special education teachers, but regular education teachers really need something to have that they can look to make sure that they are implementing and being accurate with that implementation. So right here we have the 4 R's. So reduce, replace, reinforce, respond. So for reduce, we're wanting to reduce the behavior. And then from there, we want to replace that bad behavior with a positive piece. So we're focusing on a kid keeping a clean workspace. We want to reduce the number of times that we're having to tell them to clean up. And we want to replace that negative behavior by positive behavior by having everything cleaned up. Reinforce, so if we're encouraging them, or maybe we're having to turn to a negative consequence, an office referral. And then responding and making sure that we are acknowledging the kid and also including all the other stakeholders. If it's that the parent needs to be involved, or administrator, or they have an aide, whatever we need to do. And this QR code will take you to Work Support, which is a online, and they focus on a lot of different resources to work with behavior intervention plans and autism and different behaviors. Now, this right here was very astounding to me whenever I did the math. So from my school, we have, many IEPs. We're a large high school. We have 46% of our special education students hold behavior intervention plans. So things that they need their behavior reinforced and need to be touched on. So then, whenever I was doing my research, I talked about the school report card, and then I'm also going to talk about how I worked with my office and was able to take that data from them to compare that to our disciplinary records. It roughly stayed at about 50% there as well, right above it. So it was a little bit more than the 46. But that was how many kids were being referred that had behavior intervention plans. So with that, it goes back to, is that being implemented in all classes? Is that being communicated to all teachers? And is it a resource for also the student, not just us as educators and the professionals involved? And I think those numbers really speak for themselves. And whenever we properly implement that, we have, 50% of those kids who aren't becoming an issue. So that was very interesting. So for the solutions, so what I've done in this video below is I've gone through a behavior intervention plan that I pulled off of PBIS World, and this is one for ADD, ADHD, and also disorganization, and kind of broken down each part of it and talked about what it means and what you should do with each part and how to implement that accurately and effectively for the students. One of the big things, and you can see there at the bottom, that third portion down is a very large section, and something that I talk about in that video is that you don't want to overwhelm yourself as a teacher or your regular ed teacher, and you also really don't want to overwhelm the student. You want to make it in bite-sized chunks, things that you know that they can reach and things that you know that they can achieve. And also accountability. And that accountability falls to you as a special education teacher or a regular ed teacher, but also the student and the parent. You want to have things in there that have them being accountable to the school and the school's rules, as well as the parent being involved with such. We also talk about the 4 R's and how we can relate those back to a behavior intervention plan. And now, this right here is a QR code that takes you to the sample of the BIP that I go over with the notes included on it. Okay, so my goal for how the project will improve teaching strategies for teachers is for them to be able to use that BIP that a kid has and take those pieces and implement them in their classroom. And something I also talk about in that video is how it's probably a lot of stuff that you're doing, but it might need to be more specific for that student who has that behavior intervention plan and might have that specific goal in that behavior intervention plan. A lot of times these kids who do have behavior intervention plans, they are kids who are ADD, ADHD, emotional behavior disorder, even MMD, SLD. There's so many different ways and methods. There's no key fit, no cookie cutter thing for a kid that's going to have a behavior intervention plan. So you really want to look at your kids in your class and the demographics with it. And you want to have that bank or that tool belt of items that you can pick from and be able to utilize. And these are some other resources that I found. PBIS World has a multitude of sample behavior intervention plans and other resources to help develop them. And a lot of those resources are editable, and I talk about that as well. And it's something that, if you want to take out a bulk of that text, you can, to make it more bite-sized for the student and also for the parents. They know what they're, going to be adhering to. And then a behavior intervention plan fact sheet, which I thought was a really good resource to be able to have for a parent especially, and also for a teacher. It's something that they can use and they can pull back out every year. And it's something as a special education teacher you can have on the ready as well if you need a refresher or if you have a new staff member. But I'm very excited about this. I think it's gone very well. I've shared this with a lot of my staff members, a lot of regular ed teachers, and it's something that I think by communicating and encouraging and educating everyone involved, we can all find success and really get back to what we need to do, which is find the success for the student. Thank you all.